What about heart disease? What about blood pressure? What about cholesterol? Where does the myth come in? Where does actually facts come in at this stage? How do you stay dedicated to a carnivore diet? What's been your experience with the intuitive side of this with eating a carnivore-based diet? Do you think that that's your body building up the nutrient deficiencies it might have had from eating a normal Western diet? For anyone starting a carnivore diet, they're interested in going with it. They've tried all of the other diets. Is there any tips that you recommend for them to getting in and actually getting started? And any things that they should avoid or try? Hey Lucy, so how did you find just eating meat and doing carnivore?
So what brought me to the carnivore diet, which is a diet based on only eating from the animal kingdom, so no plants, no fungi, is two things in my life. One was my personal experience of the diet world and how I was feeding myself prior, and then the other one was my experience I attained from training to be a nurse. So I'm an adult nurse, I work in orthopedic trauma. So I'll start with just my personal life. I had a very intense period of restrictive eating as a teenager, mostly stemming from just insecurity, social pressure to be this, look like that, classic teenage girl, unfortunately. But that set me down a bad route for a while. I was very restrictive, vegetarian, finding any way to avoid food, and I lost a lot of weight and I lost a lot of muscle. It was probably about just 5 months, but at the end of it I found myself in a sticky situation. I felt awful even though I reached all my goals, mentally, physically, not good, and I realized, whoa, something needs to change. So that kind of led me into my personal interest of human nutrition and what should I now eat, how can I feel better, what's the best way to fuel myself. So that journey, it took me about 3 years, but it led me to land at the carnivore diet. So the process there was, long, and I was kind of just, going with it. It was quite a natural progression. I started off very whole foods based. Most of my breakfast, for example, and it was very like the classic ideas of what was healthy, loads of vegetables, loads of plants. That's what I was seeing all around me. That's kind of like what I'd always thought. So I had a lot of vegetables, loads of salads. My breakfast used to be porridge and an entire apple with loads of nuts and chia seeds and flax seeds. Like that is like a picture of health back then. I remember I would eat that. I would be sleeping like an hour later. I would want to go to bed, and it just made me so confused because I was about 20 at the time. I was meant to be full of energy. I'd just eaten the world's most healthy breakfast and I want to just go back to bed. So I was really confused. So it led me to keep looking, keep exploring diet. And then at the same time, I was obviously training to be a nurse. So I was going around lots of different departments in the hospitals, and I was seeing so much chronic disease and so much ill health and suffering from people, and it was shocking, and it was eye-opening, and it just I couldn't help but wonder, why are these people ill? What's happened in their life for this to happen, and why is no one getting better? So I became very intrigued to that question. I wanted to know why they were ill, and I wanted to know how they could actually recover, because I was seeing a lot of people get symptomatic management, but no one was getting better. No one was I'd never heard the conversation, oh, you're cured, oh, you're now in remission. That wasn't it. It was like, you take this drug and go home and come back and we'll probably up your dose soon. That was really the method, and it just left me really confused. So I remember at the same time I was revising for a neurology exam, so about the brain, and one of the topics was talking about epilepsy, and it brought up how epilepsy in children in the early 1920s sort of time used to be one of the main treatments, used to be ketogenic diets. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing, like seizure control through diet. That must be a very profound diet if it's doing that. And at the time, we're so used and so conditioned to hear about diet only from the context of weight loss or weight gain, and that's about it. So the fact that a diet was used for something like epilepsy control, which has nothing to do with weight, nothing to do with body composition, a totally different aspect of the body, I just thought it was amazing. And it made me realize there's much more to diet than we think. We're looking at this at a very superficial level. So that sort of introduction in dietary world for far beyond weight loss and for health, in combination with my dissatisfaction for eating porridge in the morning, both led me to ketogenic diets. And so I started learning about them. The first doctor I came across was Dr. Eric Berg. Maybe you heard of him. He's big into ketogenic diets, but he loves vegetables. He loves vegetables. So I was like a high vegetable, loads of olive oils, nuts, those sort of ketogenic diet for a bit. And I felt better, but I wasn't getting the satisfaction, I would say, Like I would still find myself hungry. I was eating animal products at the time, beef and bacon and eggs, but just much smaller portions. I was very vegetable focused still. And at the time I was still eating ultra processed foods. Not that I really wanted to, though my brain was like, you want this is delicious. But I knew they were bad for me. And I didn't want to eat them, but I would still find myself eating them and eating them out of impulse and, out of control. I would eat like way too many. Even if I'd set out to have one, I'd find myself eating the whole bag, going crazy, feeling really like hijacked in the head and like wanting to eat more. And I hated that so much, but I found it really hard to stop. And it wasn't until I discovered when I was writing my dissertation on, because I understood that ketogenic diets had huge healing potentials, especially in the obvious cases of type 2 diabetes, where they have too much sugar in the blood, and there's too much sugar in the blood because they're eating too much sugar. And I was understanding that you could put these diseases into remission with ketogenic diets. But why have I never seen that? Why have I gone to my diabetes placement and I was getting told, and the patients getting told, to eat whatever you want, just cover it with insulin? It just wasn't adding up to me at all. So I wanted to understand this question. So I wrote my dissertation on that, and I wrote the dissertation on what were the barriers and facilitators for implementing low carbohydrate diets to understand why this isn't happening. And revising for that, I stumbled upon the Dr. Paul Mason video on fiber, and it just blew my mind. That was one thing I was holding on to a lot, is that I need vegetables, I need fiber, they're essential. If I don't eat them, my colon's going to fall out or something crazy is going to happen. Like, I need this. And then I watched that video and it just totally blew my mind. And I realized maybe I was wrong. Maybe we don't need fiber. Maybe it's not as beneficial as we think. The fundamentals to a human diet are animal products and fat and protein. And we can sustain ourselves just off those if you want to. And that was just mind-blowing. So I was like, see you later, vegetables. I got to try this. The curiosity drove me. Also because at the time, like I said, I was still eating the ultra-processed food. And a reason was that because I just was still hungry. I wasn't totally satisfied. And it turns out I needed that extremely nutrient-dense, filling carnivore foods to help me overcome that and actually nourish myself and improve the quality of my life. So that's how I got here. Bit of a ramble, but...
Not a ramble at all. I think a lot of people can resonate. What was the first sort of benefits you started to notice when you went full animal-based and started to cut the vegetables out? Were there things that you were dealing with, or anything in particular, mental health or skin or anything like that? Like most people have a thing that they're trying to heal when they go to something like carnivore. Did you have anything like that?
So luckily for me, God bless, I had no physical issues that I felt like I had to overcome. But like I've touched on before, a lot of it was mental for me from that very restrictive period of eating, and that's rooting from, body insecurity, all these things that have unfortunately become extremely normal with everyone. It developed very destructive thoughts and self-beliefs and opinions around food, and to a lesser extent as the years went on, but I still had like a very stressful relationship with food. I felt like I had to stay in control and, watch this, watch that, fear of gaining weight. And, to some extent, we're always going to have these because our physical appearance does play a role in our lives. No one wants to be extremely overweight. You want to feel and look good, but that can become unhealthy. And I was on the edge of that becoming, obsessive. Even if I didn't want to, though, this was the thing, even though I wanted to why can't I just move on? I just felt like I couldn't. There was a block in my head. And I think being deeply hungry was an aspect to that I just didn't even realize I was. So one thing I noticed when I went carnivore was just that feeling of satisfaction and ease towards food now, and just feeling like, what, I trust these foods to just nourish me. In a way, I'm in control of eating them. They're not addictive, because I was a little bit traumatized, I would say, from ultra processed foods, and having those moments of impulse and absolute inability to control their consumption. So in my head, I couldn't drop my controlled nature around food, because in the context of ultra processed foods, you shouldn't really do that. Or personally, I couldn't do that, because I'd go crazy. I would eat loads and loads and loads, feel awful, feel sick, and then eat loads and loads and loads more. I needed to have a mental control over that, and reasoning and conscious interactions with those thoughts in order to protect myself from them. But going carnivore allowed me to drop that, to let go and learn intuitive eating. And that's the biggest thing I noticed very quickly.
Yeah, I hear you. I came from a very different side of things, Lucy. I went from the bodybuilding side of things, which is the most, let's just say, put this in a nice way. Nah, maybe not putting it in a nice way. It can
Just
be
say
the most toxic of places to be in. It come from for me personally, it came from a deep place of low self-worth and feeling like I needed to be something in order to be loved in society, that I needed to look a certain way.
I mean, that's very similar with like eating disorders as well. Like if we talk like root cause, they're both coming from just feeling bad in yourself and thinking you need to change. And those sort of thoughts can just lead you down the wrong way.
100%. And, it got to a point where I was so out of control with my food and my binging that I would eat some food, I would put it in the bin, then I'd eat out the bin. I'd eat out the bin, getting food out the bin because I wanted more because my blood sugar dropped and then changed.
Are these ultra-processed foods?
Ultra-processed foods, yeah. It's never a chunk of celery or a bit of meat, is it?
No,
it's
you're not chucking steak in the bin.
No, definitely not now. That's for sure. So, like, I came down that path, and the first time I went to animal-based first. I went fruit and honey and all of the meats first. And I found that the honey and the fruit was still triggering me to want more and more of that for me personally. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of a challenge with myself and just go full carnivore, fat, meat, eggs, beef, all of that, see what happens. And my hunger signals just completely went. And we was talking about this earlier about intuitive eating. And I think for the first time in my entire life, I'm 38 years old, I now have a connection with my body and the signal with my body to actually be truly intuitive with the amount of food that I consume. I naturally can eat just 2 meals a day and be completely fine with that, which I never had before. And the benefits that I've noticed have been really out there. From being a 38-year-old man, I know my body pretty well, and the ability to lay in the sun all day and not get burnt. That's a weird one, but I live in Australia.
That's a really interesting one.
Because I go red.
Lots of carnivores talk about that. I mean, you can see I'm pale and freckly, and this summer was the first summer I hadn't burnt, or I burnt sometimes, and that's my own fault because sun exposure, you need to be careful with how you're going and choose how you're going to expose yourself to the sun. But I absolutely was doing longer periods in the sun where previously I think I would have been burnt.
Yeah, and it was just weird to me because I've always laid in the sun. The sun is great for me. I lay in it for about 20 minutes every day, but I'd always go red, like a big histamine response. Whereas since going full carnivore, I just can lay in the sun and not burn at all, unless I'm in it for hours in the sea or whatever in Australia. It's pretty intense, the sun here.
Yeah.
Anyway, regardless of all those things and all these benefits that I started to notice, the weird ones, not just my mental state or brain fog lifting, it was the ability to do different yoga poses or stretch further without the inflammation, and being able to train and exercise and recover quicker rather than before I'd have to wait a few days to recover. But something I wanted to ask you was, knowing what you know, knowing how healing that nutritional medicine can be, how do you find working in the allopathic sort of treatment world, nursing, seeing people using insulin, seeing people using medications to cover up things, and not anyone actually asking them, hey, have you thought about maybe not eating that Domino's pizza while you're trying to heal from this chronic symptoms? How do you sit with that, knowing what you know and you've learned and embodied yourself?
Yeah, I do get asked this quite. Some people are like, how do you do it? And one, where I chose to work, I work in orthopedic trauma. So it's focused on broken bones. Someone comes in, their leg is going that way, we make it go that way, and then they go home. And that's a lovely process because it makes sense to me. I know why they're here. I know how to help them. Nothing else but a surgery is going to fix them. That's exactly what they need to do. And I like putting my energy into that sort of thing. It just makes sense. So that's one way I chose to work with broken bones. I couldn't work in medical wards. I just don't think I could. Not that I think it's wrong that other nurses do that at all, because we are where we are at the moment, and that's just how it is. So it's not at all thinking that working within modern healthcare is wrong. But personally, I didn't want to put my energy in that. And then how else? I mean, I made my Instagram, I guess. I felt like I couldn't not say anything because I was seeing, obviously I get patients with diabetes that have come with a broken leg. A chronic disease is everywhere. So I'm still seeing it every shift I do, just in a lower rate. So I made my Instagram, really. I wanted to just talk about it, especially in the UK. It seems we're slightly behind on this ketogenic, low carb space and using it for dietary healing. Of course, there are some people, but the loudest people are coming out of Australia and America, it seems. So I just thought, why not just talk about it? I felt nothing to lose, everything to gain in a way, and the angle I take, I think free will is a beautiful thing. You can do whatever you want, and I'm not here to tell tell anyone what to do or persuade people or get them to change their minds. You know, change happens within someone when they decide they want to change. And if they make that decision and they come across my content and it helps them and it resonates with them, then like that's exactly it. That's why I've made it. So now it seems, I didn't really know what my Instagram would do when I started making it. I was like, I'm just going to talk about how I eat 12 eggs a day and see what happens, because it's shocking for people. But now I can see there's a space for this. People are reaching out to me online and being like, you know, like, what do I do? How do I do this? So I would love to try and shift my angle with healthcare and work with people to help them change their diets and help them actually address root cause. So that's how I'm managing it at the moment.
Yeah, beautiful. What a beautiful way of doing it. And I came across you from social media and I just loved the way that you conveyed the information. You know, there was one particular video where you're juggling and talking about blood sugars, and I just thought it's just a great way of you're not preaching to anyone. You're not saying this is the only way that a human being should eat. This is the thing that's working for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important, depending on where someone's at in their journey, and if they decide to go down that route, and maybe you tweak things to your own personal circumstances, and that works for someone else. But Lucy, what about heart disease? What about scurvy? What about blood pressure? What about cholesterol? What about all of these things? Okay, so where does the myth come in? Where does actually facts come in at this stage?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you
I think for me, the biggest, and for why I would tell people who hold the current beliefs about diet, which align with the recommended guidelines. So in the UK, it's the Eat Well guide, and it tells you to eat lean proteins. It tells you to avoid fat, and of the fat you do consume, make it unsaturated seed oils. And to understand why the carnivore people and animal-based people do not follow this, is the first thing you need to do is understand where those claims came from in the first place. And that is just learning about the history of the food pyramid and learning about Ansel Keys and the study. He was a physiologist, and the study that he conducted he set out to prove himself right. He conducted very flawed science, very biased science, with his theory that the consumption of dietary saturated fat from animal products caused an increase in cholesterol in the body, and it was this increase in cholesterol that was the cause of atherosclerosis, which is the buildup of plaque in an artery that then results in heart disease, heart attacks, strokes, cardiovascular events. But the problem with this was his science was very flawed. He cherry-picked data and he produced results to align with what he wanted to see. But in reality, the results from all the countries he went around the world studying men in their 60s, so again, biased sample size, and looking at their intake of saturated fat and its correlations with death from heart disease or just cases of heart disease. And in reality, there was no correlation. But he picked out 6 or 7 countries, formed this lovely little graph and published that. And that's the basis of our dietary information and our strong beliefs that animal fats, cholesterol from animal products is bad for us, which is mind-blowing, really. It's absolutely mind-blowing that the information's out there and yet the dietary guidelines are still basically exactly that. So if you can understand that, it will make you realize like, oh, so if that's not true, then what is true? And you're going to it's hard to not send yourself down that rabbit hole to really understand what human nutrition is. And that's what happened to me. And I came to the conclusion that an appropriate human diet is one that is based around nutrient-dense animal foods, full of saturated fats and full of proteins in bioavailable forms.
Completely. Did you do any of the bloods? Did you try, see what your bloods were like before or after, or any of this stuff?
No, I didn't.
Just go with how you feel?
I just went with it. Yeah, I guess the thing is with nutrition is it's always going to be up for contention because we don't know. We're only really guessing. We're using lots of different sciences in history and, looking at fossils and then understanding the mechanisms, the anatomy, the physiology, the biochemistry of the human body. We're looking at the whole picture and making a very educated guess because we will never know for sure, or maybe we can because of stable isotope testing and looking at fossils and bones, but we'll never know for 100% certainty what an appropriate human diet is, but we can make educated guesses. So that, to me, that kind of just put in a little bit of faith in the process. Like I wasn't overly concerned that I had to be making sure I was making the right decision, because I need to eat something. We all need to decide something to eat, and I didn't want to deep it too much. To me, it seems like a very logical and reasoned approach to feeding myself to select the foods that have been part of our diet for millions of years over the foods that have been part of our diet for 100 years.
How do you stay dedicated to a carnivore diet?
It tastes so good. It's just, I don't know, it just tastes, it's what I crave. It's like, it's so easy to do for me. And because I suppose what my diet used to be like, and the agony that, you know, feeling addicted to ultra processed food and sugar gave to me, I just don't want to do that again. I want to just eat when I'm hungry, stop when I'm full, and move on. So that keeps me dedicated, I suppose.
I'm going to put a very broad statement here, but I think carnivore will heal most people's addiction to food. I'm coming from a previous experience of real food addiction. And when I say food addiction, let's say carb addiction, because it's not food addiction. I wasn't addicted to just eating saturated fats and good meats and bars of celery and cucumber. It was processed, ultra processed foods. And
which aren't even foods. That's the thing. They're fake foods. They're edible products.
Completely. That's exactly right. And I was nutriently deficient, starving myself from these foods. So I'd be eating huge amounts of calories, making myself more and more overweight. I was actually starving my body of actual real nutrients, always constantly craving more of it. So it was just like the first ever brief period of freedom from that was actually going carnivore and giving my body actually what it really truly desired at that time.
Yeah.
So anyone that is going through that and they feel that they are going through these constant cycles of binging and emotional addiction to food, or food addiction in general, I would say just try it for 28 days, 30 days, like I did. And I didn't really think anything of it. I'll just go with it. 28 days. Everyone's doing it at the moment. Why not? Just do it.
I did 30 days at the start, and now I'm a year in. I would not have thought I would keep that up for a year.
Yeah.
But it's strange when you're on the outside looking in, you think I understand it, because when I first heard the concept, I was like, that's insane. But when I just tried it, it just started to like make sense to me, and realizing what normal eating is, it made me realize that the way we are viewing food is just twisted. And it's kind of what you're talking about kind of goes into like the whole calories conversation, because if you're on the calories train, you can eat only Oreos and lose weight and meet your goals. But a big problem that I've realized that we've eaten ourselves into is the idea and perspective of seeing diet as only being a weight loss problem. Fundamentally, diet has nothing to do with wanting to gain or wanting to lose weight. We need to approach diet from a health first perspective. And then the consequences that sort of intention and goal will create in your life will most likely be a healthy weight. A healthy weight is a consequence of a good health status. And if you're coming at diet with, that calories in, calories out, counting everything, sticking in your limits, that doesn't mean health at all. And you could lose weight doing that, sure, but are you healthy? Are you losing weight? Are you losing health with your weight? And that's the problem here.
I'm going to put my hands up, Lucy, and I'm just going to say that I am an ex-calorie counting addict and I'm in rehab, right? And that was because, just like you, I was trying to find some sense of control to still keep my emotional addiction or my addiction to food in track. And that was what it was. I was still trying to find control. I'd be counting down to the last 10 calories to be able to consume more crap food into my diet. Mm-hmm. So it was like, and the reason that the calorie thing doesn't make sense to me now, when I've been eating a more meat-based diet, is there's more of a regulational sense that's happening. It's not even a word, but you know what I mean. In the sense of when I would consume calories, I'd have a set amount of calories that I'd have for the week or a day. I would then stick to those calories because I needed to stick to those calories in order to get the goals what I wanted. As we are never in the same state all the time. We're never always hot. We're never always we're never always we're never always happy all the time. We're always up and down. So some days I need more food, I need more fat, and I need more electrolytes or salt on my food. And some days I need a little bit less, and I actually feel like I can fast the day and have one meal that day. And when I was counting calories, there was none of that. I was eating constantly throughout the day, non-stop. But really, it was all just a sense of control for me. And this comes back to the intuitive eating. What's been your experience with the intuitive side of this with eating a carnivore-based diet? diet?
Just being able to open up my appetite and go and move along with my body. I feel like, I'm sure you're similar, I was always fighting my hunger. I was always trying to like avoid it, to dampen it. It was almost like a fear for me because of my previous experiences, like I described earlier. And it's weird because you have these like, it's like you almost have two voices in your head. One being like, no, you're hungry, like logical, just go eat food. But then the other one is all getting involved and you're trying to manipulate it and control it. Like, just like you say, that sense of control gives you some strange satisfaction in your life, but it's very twisted, really. It's not how we should be functioning. It's not like a easy, stress-free way to live, and you don't need it. You actually do not need it. So intuitive eating had allowed me, with carnivore, just allowed me to feel hungry, eat food, stop eating food when I felt full, and then move on. And sometimes at the start, my hunger was crazy. I would eat huge meals, maybe like 8 eggs, bacon, big meal, and then an hour later I'd be like, I'm still hungry, and just do that again, and then have like 400 grams of beef burgers or something else. And prior to carnivore and like that trust I was developing in my true hunger signals, I would not have done that. I would have been like, no, you're not hungry, this is crazy, I can't believe you're going to eat that much food. And I wouldn't have allowed myself to do it, and I would have just moved on and not actually valued my hunger signals and given into them, because that's what's a very normal thing to do. And you have hunger for a reason. Your body is looking for something. So when you feed it the species appropriate diet, you can trust that it's genuine and that it wants something in your food, so you can just go with it.
Species appropriate diet. I love that. And do you
think it's a good term?
Yeah, it's a great term. Do you think that that's your body building up the nutrient deficiencies it might have had from eating a normal Western diet?
Yeah, absolutely. Or for me, periods of restriction and under eating for a long time definitely would have left me deficient. I don't know in what, but because of the hunger that I experienced when I finally like opened it up and gave it nutrient dense foods as much as it wanted, it would be like more. So 100% there was something going on there.
And something I found interesting that, you've been in it a little bit longer than I have, that maybe you've experienced, that I found that I can eat a lot more calories this way and not put weight on, even though that's not my goal. My goal is brain, how I feel physically, everything else. But I've noticed in my physical, like my aesthetically, I lose more body fat, but I eat more now than I did when I was consuming carbs. And I find that weird because, the whole calorie counting crew will say, well, this calories in, calories out, but I just don't, that doesn't resonate with me, with my experience right now. Like I can eat 4,500, 5,000 calories of meat, eggs and fat, and I will still, and do that consistently for weeks, and I will still wake up getting leaner and leaner and leaner. And for the first time in my life, I'm not trying to look a certain way. And now, because I'm not trying to look a certain way, my body now looks the way that I've always wanted it to look in the first place.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. In life, if you stop trying, and it might just work out.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, what you're talking about, that's a reflection on what the source of your energy and where you're choosing to get your energy from, meaning fats and proteins over carbohydrates. There's understanding the role of insulin in body composition. Insulin is the hormone that has lots of roles in the body. One of them is to remove sugar from our blood. And it's, high levels of insulin just can be responsible to putting on fat. So you could be eating loads and loads and loads of food, but if you're insulin, to some extent, you like I've gained weight on carnivore. This isn't like you can eat as much as you want and you'll never gain weight. That I'm not going to put that message out there because it's not true. You definitely can gain weight on carnivore, but it's very different. It's very different weight. Keeping your insulin levels low has an amazing effect on your body composition and whether you're going to store fat or burn fat.
Interesting. And when you just said that, I think what it is for me is that I'm moving more. I'm less tired. I'm not having those crashes afterward. You said about the chia seed thing. It made me laugh because I was like, that was me. I was eating all the fiber stuff, all of the fiber, because fiber is extremely good for everything. And I'd eat huge amounts of this food and I'd sleep half the day. So I was moving a lot less and I was recovering
blood sugar. The fatigue and the tiredness that someone feels after a high carb meal is because you've spiked your blood sugar. Insulin, the hormone that I just spoke about, is released to then bring it down back to that level because your body wants wants its blood sugar to be in a very controlled zone. Having loads of carbohydrates hits out that zone. It doesn't want to be there. So insulin's released to bring it back down. But the problem is insulin it can't quite know how much it needs to produce, and it can overshoot and you can take your blood sugar too low in the response to that spike. And that's what makes you crash. Like we call that a sugar crash. And that's why I was falling asleep after my porridge, because even though I had loads of sugar, my body then trying to catch up and find its equilibrium again, it overshot and would make me feel tired. And then it kind of keeps you in this cycle of like, I could eat that meal again, and then maybe you do eat that meal again and there's more carbs, and just that it's like up and down, up and down. But carnivore, it takes you off that sugar roller coaster and you just become stable. Maybe you're not sugar hyper jumping off the walls, fine, maybe you're not doing that, but you're also not then falling asleep after your meals. And for me, I like that nice middle zone. It works well.
That's so interesting you say that, because that's what I'm experiencing right now. When I first went carnivore, I was a bit adrenalized. Like I could feel cortisol pumping through my body. I wasn't sleeping. I was a bit like just wired.
Yeah.
And I did love that energy for a bit, but then I was like, this just doesn't feel good. My body was just like tight. But I was like, I understand this is an adaptation phase. My body is going from using glucose to becoming more fat adapted. Whereas now I'm in this place where it's like this stable, equanimous sort of like feeling during my day. Yeah, I'm just going to go with it. This balanced energy. The question I'd like to ask you, Lucy, is for anyone starting a carnivore diet, they're interested in going with it. They've tried all of the other diets. Is there any tips that you recommend for them to getting in and actually getting started? And any things that they should avoid or try?
Yeah, number one, slow transition, especially if you're coming from a high sugar, high ultra processed foods, loads of plants, to just go like, okay, I'm carnivore now overnight. I would not recommend that. You want to give your body a nice gentle period to get used to the changes and adapt itself for your microbiome, for your overall well-being, for your energy levels, for any negative symptom that you can experience when transitioning to carnivore. You're only going to help your body even not experience them, or experience them to a lesser degree. There are lots of things that can happen during someone's transition. I won't get into everything, but a big one would be like keto flu. People can experience really negative symptoms as their body moves away from glucose and shifts to a fat metabolism. You can get symptoms like headaches, fatigue, brain fog. I had this. I was like runny nose, like flu-like, really, really strange symptoms. And, an overnight change could make that much more intense. So I'd absolutely not recommend that. After that, the biggest thing I would say is just eat whenever you're hungry until you're full. Do not ever at the start, whilst you're adapting, do not try and control the quantity of food you're going to eat. You have to give your body what it wants at any point that it wants it. And if that's, the first thing in the morning, you're starving, then eat. And then an hour later, you're finding yourself hungry again, then eat. You should not at all try and escape your hunger signals, because on a species appropriate diet, they are there for a reason. And during an adaptation, and there's so many changes going on, you need to support your body as much as possible. So giving it the energy to do that is vital. And that kind of links back into intuitive eating. If your goal is to do that, which I think all our goals should be to eat intuitively, I think that's a really good way to be, then you have to ask yourself, why are you trying to not eat? Why are you trying to go against your body? There can be a lot of self-realizations during the process of going carnivore. You can learn a lot about yourself, realize these things that you were holding on to for a long time, things that you weren't serving you and serving alternative motives within yourself. And going carnivore can maybe force you to acknowledge what's going on really in your mental health and your thought processes, and force you to confront them in a way. And you have that choice to do that, and find out what your life's like on the other side of that, or you can choose to not. It's up to you. Going through that process and doing a lot of self-inquiry myself, and really working through your false beliefs and false perceptions can invite you to a whole new world and perspective and way you see living and your life. So long response, but just eat when you're hungry.
Beautifully said, Lucy, and I can really resonate with what you just last said, because an ex-emotional food addict, I would say that as soon as I stopped using food to numb myself, I found that all of the emotions came up to the surface. And because I used food as a way to regulate my nervous system and my body in day-to-day living, and I wasn't able to do that because I wasn't using those carb sources anymore to do that, to numb me, I had to really sit and feel and experience what was going through my system and the emotions that were rising underneath. It was
and that happened with me
one.
as well. And I don't think people really, I should make a video on this. This is a really important point of it makes you confront psychological beliefs that you have been running away from for so long and using food to deal with. But you know, if we're talking about root cause, we have to then, eating carnivore can bring you to the root cause of why you're eating junky, carby, ultra-processed foods in the first place. And that's an emotional roller coaster. I didn't actually realize what I was getting myself into in the terms of my mental health and my mindset and my thoughts before going carnivore. I didn't quite realize how much of a blanket food was having to that part of me. But wow, it's that part of the whole carnivore experience, I don't talk about this much, but that's the biggest. It's nothing to do with my physical anything, being confronted with your own shortcomings almost and faults, but in a new way, with that the goal is to just overcome and become better, is life-changing. It's been extremely profound for me, and it's changed the way I see myself and I see the world. And people notice that too. People be like, wow, this all-meat diet is really done well for you, because I'm just I'm more chill, I'm calmer, I'm more content. Obviously you have issues in life and that's fine, but the perspective just changes and it shifts, and your ability to deal with it just becomes much better when you've shifted through the baggage that you had on yourself for so long.
Amazing. Lucy, where can people find you and find more of your awesome content?
I am on Instagram under That Carnivore Nurse, and I'm working on making a YouTube channel, but I haven't done that yet. But it will be the same. I've made the account, so I'm that far in. It's the same names, so YouTube, hopefully, and then just Instagram at the moment. And shameless plug, I am in the process of developing a coaching program focused on using carnivore, but with that strong focus on intuitive eating and understanding and learning that within yourself. So if that's something you feel would be interested in, then check out my Instagram for when that gets released. I don't actually know when that will be, but one day.
Beautiful. And for everyone listening, if this episode has challenged your beliefs around or made you think differently about what you currently eat, then share it with someone else and who needs to hear it. I know there's a lot of people that in my circle that probably would really benefit from this way of eating, and I think it's better if we hear it from someone else rather than going straight to it oh, you should eat this way, because I know that can be me sometimes. It's better for it to come somewhere else and again make the change be you. Thank you so much for your time, Lucy, and
Thank you.
Connect soon. Cheers.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on.